The diner sat on the edge of a lonely highway, half forgotten by travelers and the world alike. The neon sign flickered "Open" in weary pink light, buzzing against the sound of rain tapping the windows. Inside, Sofia wiped the counter for the third time that night, pretending not to glance at the door every few seconds. It was late, close to midnight, and she knew he would come soon, just like he always did. Right on time, the door creaked open, and a gust of cold air swept in, carrying the faint scent of wet earth and diesel. The old man stepped inside, his shoulders hunched, his coat soaked through. His eyes, gray and tired, searched the diner until they found her. He nodded once, almost apologetically, and shuffled toward the corner booth, the one that was always his. Sofia turned away quickly, pretending to refill a coffee pot. Her boss, Manuel, had already warned her about feeding strangers for free. He said it made the place look bad, that charity didn't pay bills. But how could she charge someone who looked like that? Someone whose hands trembled as he tried to hold a cup, someone who never asked for anything except a bit of warmth and silence. She waited until Manuel disappeared into the storage room, then quietly slid a bowl of soup onto a tray and walked toward the booth. "Here," she whispered, setting the bowl down gently. "Eat before it gets cold." The old man looked up at her, his lips parting slightly as if to speak, but no words came out. Instead, he just nodded again and picked up the spoon. The way he lifted it, slowly, carefully, as though every movement required effort, made something twist inside her chest. He ate quietly, savoring each spoonful as though it were the last meal he'd ever have. Sofia sat across from him, just for a moment, pretending to wipe the salt shaker. "You don't have to thank me," she murmured. "Just come when you need to." He smiled faintly, a fragile, almost invisible smile. "You have a kind heart, Nina," he said in a voice hoarse from silence. "But kindness is dangerous when it's seen by the wrong eyes." She frowned, but before she could ask what he meant, the bell above the door jingled. She sprang up, hiding the tray behind the counter. It was just a trucker stopping for coffee. When she turned back, the old man had finished his soup and was staring out the window, the rain reflected in his eyes. He looked like someone waiting for something, or someone that would never come. As the hours dragged on, he stood to leave, pressing a small crumpled bill onto the table. "You don't have to pay," Sofia said softly, but he only smiled again. "I always pay my debts," he whispered, glancing toward the window, "even when others won't let me." Then he left, vanishing into the storm as quietly as he'd come. Sofia stood there, her heart uneasy. Something in his words lingered like a shadow. She didn't know why, but she had the strange feeling that she wouldn't sleep that night, and that by feeding a stranger, she might have just stepped into something far bigger than herself. The next night, the diner felt different. The air was thick and heavy, as if even the rain outside had grown cautious. Sofia arrived early, unlocking the door and turning on the lights, but the familiar hum of comfort was gone. Every creak of the floor, every gust of wind against the window made her glance up. She kept looking toward the booth in the far corner, the old man's booth, waiting to see his tired silhouette appear through the door. But the hours passed, and he never came. By 9 o'clock, the roads outside were nearly deserted. A single truck roared by and disappeared into the night. Sofia sighed, wiping her hands on her apron. Maybe he was sick. Maybe he'd found shelter somewhere. Maybe. Her thoughts stopped when 2 headlights appeared in the distance, growing brighter until the diner's windows glowed white. 2 black trucks pulled into the parking lot, engines still running, lights slicing through the darkness. Her stomach tightened. It wasn't the kind of place that got visitors at this hour. The doors opened almost at the same time, and 4 men stepped out. They didn't look like travelers. Their clothes were too neat, their boots too clean. They moved with purpose. Sofia's pulse quickened as the first man entered. He was tall, with a sharp jaw and a military posture. His gaze swept the diner like a scanner. "Evening," he said, his tone flat, businesslike. "You the only one working here?" Sofia nodded, forcing a polite smile. "Yes, sir. Coffee?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, weathered photograph. He placed it on the counter, sliding it toward her. The image was blurry but unmistakable. The old man. "We're looking for him," the man said. "Have you seen him?" Her breath caught. Every instinct screamed to lie, but her hands trembled. I don't think so. Lots of people stop here," she said, her voice barely steady. The man tilted his head, studying her. "Be sure, he's dangerous. The word rang in her ears like a thunderclap. She thought of the frail hands lifting the spoon, the quiet voice saying, "Thank you." Dangerous? Impossible. Another man entered, glancing around, then toward the back hallway where she kept the supply closet, and where, just an hour earlier, she had left a small paper bag of sandwiches on the shelf. She froze. "Mind if we look around?" he asked, already moving. Before she could reply, they split up. One checking the kitchen, another peering behind the counter, a third walking toward the back exit. Sofia's heart pounded so loudly she thought they might hear it. She wanted to scream, to tell them to leave, but fear kept her silent. Her gaze flicked toward the curtain that hid the booth that had moved ever so slightly when the trucks arrived. The tall man followed her eyes, and his expression darkened. "What's back there? Just—" "Storage," Sofia stammered, but the curtain moved again, barely noticeable, a shadow shifting in the corner. The man's hand went to his holster. "Don't move," he ordered. At that moment, the back door slammed open. A burst of cold air swept through, and Sofia gasped. Someone was running outside. Footsteps splashing through puddles, the sound fading into the distance. The men sprinted after it, shouting into radios, their boots thundering against the floor. Sofia stood frozen behind the counter, her chest tight, her mind spinning. She rushed to the window, pressing her face to the cold glass just in time to see a figure disappearing into the forest beyond the highway. Even in the rain, she recognized his uneven gait, the old man's silhouette. Her hands trembled as she whispered into the empty diner. "What are you running from?" But deep down, a more terrifying question echoed inside her. What have I gotten myself into? The rain hadn't stopped all night. It came down harder now, blurring the world outside the diner into streaks of gray and silver. Sofia stood by the window, her reflection pale and trembling in the glass. The black trucks were still there, their engines idling, lights cutting through the darkness. The men had fanned out into the woods, their flashlights slicing through the trees, shouting commands over the roaring storm. She could barely hear them anymore, only the faint echo of voices swallowed by the wind. Her hands shook as she wiped the counter, even though there was no one left to serve. Every sound made her flinch, the hum of the fridge, the rattle of the air vent, the distant crack of thunder. Then, suddenly, a shape appeared outside. She froze. The back door creaked open, and a trail of muddy footprints appeared across the tiles. The old man stumbled in, drenched, his face pale but calm. He looked exhausted, as though every step had been a battle. "They won't stop," he whispered, clutching a small soaked bag to his chest. "They think I betrayed them. I only told the truth." Sofia stared at him, her heart aching. "Who are they? What did you do?" He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hides a lifetime of regret. "Once I worked for them. I saw what they did, what they buried. I couldn't stay silent. So I ran, but you—" He looked at her with eyes that seemed to see through her fear. "You shouldn't have helped me. They'll come for you now, too." "No," she said, shaking her head. "You need to leave. There's a back road behind the diner. I'll tell them you went the other way." The old man's hand trembled as he reached out, touching her arm lightly. "You have a good heart, Sofia. Never let them take that from you." Before she could respond, the front door burst open. The men stormed in, flashlights blinding her eyes. "Stop!" one shouted. The old man turned, raising his hands, but he didn't run this time. The bag slipped from his grip and hit the floor with a dull thud. One of the men kicked it open. Inside were old photographs, documents sealed in plastic, a faded government badge. "Put him down." Another ordered, his gun trained on the old man. Sofia screamed, "No, wait!" But the crack of a gunshot cut through the storm. The old man's body crumpled, collapsing near the counter. The men rushed forward, checking the bag, ignoring the waitress frozen in horror. "This is it," one of them muttered, flipping through the papers. He really had the files. They didn't even look at her as they left, dragging the old man's lifeless body into the rain. The truck's engines roared to life and disappeared into the night, leaving behind only silence and the faint metallic scent of blood. Sofia stood motionless for what felt like hours. Then, slowly, she knelt down where he had fallen. The bag lay open beside her, one photo half soaked in blood and rain. It showed a younger version of the man, standing proudly with soldiers, and a little girl holding his hand. On the back, faint handwriting read, "For Sofia when you're old." Enough to understand, her breath caught, tears blurred her vision. The world spun around her as the truth hit like a thunderclap. She hadn't just been feeding a stranger. She had been saving her grandfather, the man she never knew existed. From that night on, the booth in the corner remained untouched. Every evening, before closing, Sofia would place a bowl of soup there, warm and waiting. A silent promise to the man who had risked everything for the truth, and for the granddaughter who unknowingly gave him one last moment of kindness before the end.